Okay, why don't we do the intros real quick? Dan, why don't you start?
Yeah, so my name is Dan Fantasia. I'm the president and CEO of Treeline Incorporated. We are a search firm that is exclusive to the recruitment of sales professionals. So we're known for building best-in-class sales organizations across the United States. I'd say North America, actually. Recognized as an Inc. 5000 fastest growing company 5 times. Recognized as one of the best places to work in Boston for 10 times. And same best place to work across the United States by Inc. magazine for 8 years. So we spent a lot of time building a strong culture and delivering really for our clients with a 97% success rate when it comes to helping them hire top sales producers for their organizations.
All right, good. So do what Dan did, but do it shorter. All right. So I'm Ken Chio. My company's our sales coach. We work with sales teams and sales managers and make sure they're working strategic plans and they know how to get the decision makers and they close the right amount of business. That's what we do. All right, Maurice.
Hey, yeah, my name is Maurice Arbeliz. I work for a civil engineering product manufacturer. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing. And kind of just looking for some insights. We've gone through a growth spurt, and I've been hiring a few salespeople. So just really here to learn what I may be missing.
What type of instruments, though? Tell them what your instruments do. It's asphalt
Yeah,
based.
they're primarily for materials testing, raw materials testing for infrastructure construction,
Okay.
highways, large buildings, anything that has to do with infrastructure, if airports, ports, that kind of thing. So we build
Yeah.
for the civil engineering laboratories.
They got lots of SKUs, right? Lots of SKUs. All right, Ed.
Yeah, Ed Nickerson from Gustavo Preston. We're a fluid handling pump provider for the HVAC and commercial plumbing space in the New England area. The director of sales, and just looking to, again, learn how to hire the right people and expand our business.
All right, good. Kevin?
Yeah, I'm the general manager of Global Connector Technology for the Americas. We're a UK-based company. We make commercial interconnect products. We're the world market leader, if you will, in USB connectors. So if you're charging your phone, that's likely it's one of our parts that are doing this. So
Great. Stacy?
Hi, my name is Stacy. I work for United Chemical Technologies. I am an office manager slash recruiting. We're a specialty chemical manufacturing company. So
All right.
we're just looking. Yep.
Good. Okay. All right, I'm going to start the screen here and get the slide deck up. So again, what we're talking about is recruiting and hiring the right salespeople. 8 things companies must do to do that. Okay, that's the topic for today. So I'm going to get started. Again, if you have questions about anything we're talking about, bring it up because we want to address them as they come up. So first, if you've ever hired the wrong salesperson, you know what I'm talking about here. It's expensive. I mean, this survey said it was 30 to 50% in general of the base salary. And if you hold on to them for 3 months or 6 months, I mean, obviously that's the case, right? But there's a lot of additional costs there that could or could not be included. Cost to onboard them, train them. And then let's face it, if they're underperforming, they tend to really need a higher percentage of their time to manage that underperformance. And, they could be really impacting somebody with a bad attitude really has an impact on the rest of the team. Okay. And usually what's not factored into that is the opportunity cost, because if you hired somebody to bring in $1 million of sales and they don't, after 3 months, it's cost you $333,000, right? So, and hopefully there's no legal or compliance issues, but then you got to start over again. And now you have the additional cost to replace them. Okay. And for a small company, that's a big deal, and like I said, a bad apple can really impact other other performers, you know, and this survey showed that as much as 30% of an impact on the other team members. Okay. So usually what I find happens is that companies hire salespeople because somebody presented themselves. You know, an employee says, you know, you need to hire this person. They could sell ice cubes to Eskimos, right? And they're in front of you. And now you have to, you know, you're like, all right, well, I'll tell them about the job. We'll bring them in for an interview. And they tell you everything you want to hear. Okay. Now you're not going to hire a salesperson that can't sell themselves, right? Nobody would, right? So you hire them. Then they start really hitting the road and you start to see some good activity and you get sort of encouraged. Say, this person could really work out. But after a while, they get complacent and then they stop doing the behavior. And then you stop getting results. And either they leave or they stay and they stress you out. Okay. And then you have to start all over again. Okay. So why does this happen? You know, when people are surveyed, in this survey, this is a little, you know, it's 2014, but I think it's still relevant. 38% said they really needed to fill the position. And that's what happens is, you know, I always ask CEOs, look, are you looking for salespeople? Are you looking for salespeople? And they say, I'm always looking. Okay, that tells me they're not looking. Because if they're always looking, they don't have a process. They didn't figure out, well, how am I going to get the right person? You have to have a process. And, you know, and so what happens is that person presents themselves however they do. And you have to make a decision on them. In that case, you're really looking at the things you like about them and you're ignoring the yellow lights. And the yellow lights is really what leads to failure, typically. Okay. So you need to have a process, and that's what we're going to talk about today, right? 34% they say they didn't work out. Well, question is why, and do they know why? You know, and I think most of the time why salespeople don't work out is two things. Number one, that you didn't really think about what you expect from them, and you didn't clarify those expectations with them, and then you didn't have the tools to measure every step of the sales process so that you could give them feedback about where they're falling down or where they can improve on efficiency. Because if you don't have all those things put in place, then you really don't know whether you didn't set them up the right way or whether you did get the wrong person. Maybe you did, okay? 21% said that they didn't test or research the employee skills well enough. That's another thing that we're going to cover today, how to really do that. And then not performing adequate background checks, okay? The first thing I want to really emphasize here is that if you're making changes to your sales structure, that's step 3, okay? Step 1 is, what is your sales strategy? What are the segments, marketing segments, where you have the best opportunity, where you're underserved for the market that you need to address, and there's the best opportunity there? Number 1. Number 2, how are you going to go to market? What's your marketing plan? What's your prospecting plan? What's the sales process? So now you can really have an idea about where you want them to focus, so you know what kind of expertise they need, and what is it that they should be doing. Now you can do step 3 and figure out, okay, what do you need? What do I need to hire? What are, you know, all the elements of that particular role, that position I'm trying to fill. Okay. And far too many times people just, they go, I'm going to need a salesperson. They go out and hire a salesperson who has experience in your industry. Well, they haven't done step 1 and step 2 and step 3. Once they've done that, now you can figure out who you want to hire the right person, start the execution, and track and adjust to what's happening. Okay. So normally you really need to design the work environment first. That's number 1. And part of that is your culture. Will they fit in? Will they be a good team member with the rest of your team? Then you create the job description, an employment behavioral agreement that not just tells them what they're going to get, but also what you expect from them. Okay. Develop a screening process, an interview process, and then advertise the position and then develop your candidate pipeline and then have an onboarding process. Okay. So first, it's really number one, the must do number one, clarify the work environment. What will they be selling? How much does it cost? Who are they selling to? So who will they need to get in front of, and how would they do that? Do you need a hunter? Do you need a farmer? You know, how will they get to the people that they need to talk to? What's the process they will want? Well, not even what they want to need to go through, is what does the customer, the person you want them to be meeting with, how do they want to interact with your salespeople? So what's the process to do that? And who else will they need to work with? Okay, so these are all part of really clarifying that work environment. Okay, and then you can really drill down on what is the role you're trying to fill. Because normally what happens is they go out and they hire an account executive. These are the more experienced, more expensive people. Okay, and you know, so they go out and they look for somebody who has some experience and a Rolodex, and they fail. Okay. Now, maybe that is exactly what they need, is an account executive, right? But again, they haven't done step one. What's the sales process, sales strategy? What is the go-to-market strategy? And then what expectations do you, and how have you articulated that with them? Okay. And how are you going to test for that productivity and give them the feedback on how they're doing? Okay. But maybe it's not an account executive. Maybe really what happens in my world, because I deal a lot with manufacturing and distribution companies. And once they have customers, the customers keep buying. Well, then they become account managers. They're not out looking for new stuff. And justifiably, because they got good customers, you got to take care of them, right? Okay, well, maybe what you need is account managers so the account executives can go out and keep on bringing in new business, because you can't do everything, right? Maybe that's what you need. Or maybe you need an outbound sales development rep that can do the churn and feed leads to the account executives. Or maybe you're getting a lot of inbound inquiries and they're getting bogged down just trying to screen people who are just kicking the tires. So you need an inbound market response rep. Or maybe they're spending so much time on a plane, they don't have enough time to be in front of customers. So maybe what you need is some distributors or sales agents in an area where you can have somebody that just spends time with them periodically. Okay. So you have to really, what's your sales strategy and how you're going to go to market, so you can define really what is it that you need, and take a look at what your salespeople are doing. Are they really spending too much time prospecting so they can't be in front of in sales meetings? Are they spending too much time falling up on inbound? Are they spending too much time on meetings that don't close? Or are they spending too much time with account management? Because if they're spending 20% or more of their time in any of these areas, maybe you need more resources there. Okay. So that's a good indicator is how they're spending their time as to where you need to add resources. Okay. So first thing in the job description, we use this acronym TEAM. So you define the tasks, the experience and expertise, attitude and behavior, and how they manage their time. Okay. And usually we're hiring based on experience and expertise. Okay. And what ends up happening is we fire based on attitude and behavior. Okay. So, we're going to be talking about how do you really clarify that, and, all these things that go into it. What are the behaviors they need to do, and are they capable of doing that? Do they have the acumen to really be able to address a complex marketplace? Do they have the personal soft skills, the competencies or experience? And that's usually where we hire, is experience or education and training, but sometimes it's how are they going to keep themselves motivated, or their emotional intelligence that creates the problem. Okay. And we use benchmarks. We use a DISC assessment, and we measure for behaviors, the competencies, personal skills, and the motivators, what motivates them, as tests for hiring people, as just additional information that's helpful in determining, do you have the right fit? And sometimes it's hard to determine because, even the competencies, there's 25 different things we test for. And by the time you get to number 20, you're like, yeah, that's important too. So what, you're never going to get somebody that's highly skilled in all of them. So which ones are the most important? So what we do is we get like 3 to 7 people that surround the position together, and we do a brainstorm on it, and we categorize everything, and we put priorities on it, and we put how much time, a percentage of time. Then everybody goes and they take the assessment as if they're the job, and we merge them together so you have something to compare the assessments against. Must do number 2, the compensation program. That you've got to motivate. Salespeople need to be motivated, and again, part of that setting expectations and showing them how they're continuing to improve on an ongoing basis. But the compensation program needs to be aligned with that opportunity for continuous growth, and enable you to manage your territories over time as things change, and still keep them motivated. Okay. It also needs to enable them to earn a decent wage, or they're going to leave. Okay. Okay. Number 3, fill the pipeline. All right, Dan, you're up.
All right. Listen, Ken, all great points. All really good points. I think the key to, you covered a lot there. The key to filling an accurate pipeline is making sure that you completely understand the role and what you're recruiting. With little detail, it's very hard to find a top producer to join your company unless you have completely done everything that Ken just mentioned and identify the type, the selling characteristics of the type of person that's going to work well in your environment. So when we go to market, the first thing we want to do is figure out who the company is, what the sales motion looks like, what the requirements are, what the average sales size is, the sales cycle. And we want to identify the characteristics that fit best into your environment so that we can go hunt down and find those individuals. Secondly, so you'll want to do that as well, right? Before you can conduct a search, you have to start with understanding exactly who you're looking to target. And there's a bunch of ways that you can target individuals. One, of course, is using an employee referral program, which does produce very good results. Another way is cold outreach. And I'll be honest with you, the majority of our searches are built on cold outreach. So first, we understand who the company is. We understand the social characteristics of the sales model. We understand who the competition is. We look at basically the different regions that you're looking in, and then we go to market and we hunt down individuals that meet those exact requirements. We qualify them on the average sales size, the sales cycle, their quota. We make sure they're hitting quota, make sure that they're employed, and then make sure that they're interested in the opportunity. So what's super important is to make sure that you understand and are knowledgeable not only about what you want in the next person that you hire, but that you're competitive from a compensation standpoint. If you go to market and we find that everyone in the market is too expensive, everyone that meets your requirement is too expensive, then one of 2 things has to happen. Either you need to move your comp up, or you need to move your requirement down. Unless there's an infinite amount of people that we keep searching on, then we can keep trying it. If not, you have to listen to the market and gather data to understand where you are and if you can compete, right? If you can't compete, you have to change things. There's a lot of different things you can do around this as well. There's automated outreach. You can use AI prompts Like, have any of you used an AI prompt to even help with your process? Like I typed in a little prompt here. It's as simple as this. You go to ChatGPT, draft a strategy, 5-step outreach cadence for a passive senior account executive candidate currently working at a competitor. Or, there's lots of these things. I'm sure you've all tried ChatGPT. We use it all the time. Every one of our recruiters do. And the reason why we do is because we are looking for the top talent. We're trying to find talent that we need to drip on and connect with to find out if they're actively or selectively considering opportunities. For many companies, their strategies employee referrals and advertising. And then they get a group of people and they hire the best of the worst because they really haven't put the time in, or they don't have the resources to find the real top talent that's going to help them get their company to the next level. Next slide, Ken.
So
Good idea.
you mentioned ChatGPT, and one of the things that I use it for is doing some preliminary market research. Like, so especially if I have a new client, and I'm like trying to help them to define where's some of your market, what's happening in the marketplace, and you mentioned compensation too. So, when somebody wants help with a compensation program, the first thing I do is say, you got to go find somebody that you don't compete with, but you're in a very similar type of sales environment as them, and they have salespeople that are doing really well, and that's them. What do you pay your salespeople? What benefits do they get? Tell me about the structure of it, right? And you could maybe find somebody that is like that has, and on LinkedIn you can see if they have salespeople or not, and then ask them, listen, I see you have salespeople. Would you be willing to spend like a half an hour with me just to talk about how you compensate them, or is somebody will be willing to help you with that? So I just thought of that when you said ChatGPT. Also, Maurice had a question about Disc. Maurice, are you using Disc?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
We use it internally for the entire company. Audrey Parker is also on this call from my company, and she kind of initiated that. She's done a lot of good things like that, but we were kind of hesitant using it during the interview process. We didn't know, well, at least I didn't know. Audrey might have a different opinion, but I didn't know if that would be too intrusive to use during just an interview to find out about it. But it sounds like you guys implement that as maybe another filter to really know where the people are as far as their DISC assessment and whether they'd be a good fit.
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously you're not going to hire solely on that assessment and how they come out, but I had a client that was a very large insurance agency, and the national company, and they used it. They dissed all their employees, and the part of the problem in insurance is that young people, they don't have the experience in sales, but they don't have insurance experience. So what they would do, they disc everybody also. So they already know going in who has good sales DNA or who might, okay? But they never put them right in sales because they had put them in underwriting or they put them in customer service so they can learn insurance first. But usually the ones that have the good sales DNA, they're like going to the chief sales officer saying, hey, can I sell now? Can I sell? I want to be selling now. And they're pulling back on the suspenders, right? But they say, oh, wait a minute, they got 6 months of training or in a different position. Then they give them to me. They come in top half of new sales production every time, right? So, but I use it as another indicator. We're looking for really the yellow lights is what we're looking for, and so these are things that you might not notice until they've been working for you for 3 months.
Right.
The behavioral things, the attitude things. So we test for behaviors, motivators, and competencies. And it's just another, more information that you can get. You can never have too much information when you're doing this. And like I said, we will do a benchmark first if it's helpful, because now you have something that you merge them together, the assessments that the different participants take. So you have a benchmark to compare the assessments from the candidates against. And it's just, again, just more information. All right.
Thank you so
Excellent.
much for that. I didn't
Oh.
get a chance to say hello, everybody. I'm
Oh,
Audrey
hi.
Parker. I'm the Director of Human Resources here at Instratech, and Maurice definitely told you all about our company, and we're finding that this is very beneficial. I've always done it in my career and did bring it here. It just helps us. It's just a tool. You know, it's
Sure.
not, you know,
Exactly.
it doesn't provide you with everything, but it really provides a tool for the skills that your employees have, the type, how they communicate, but it also is beneficial. I think it's going to be very beneficial in recruitment as well. So definitely good to know that other companies are doing that in
Oh,
the
yeah.
recruitment process. So
It's great for that. How to communicate, understanding different people, and coaching. Great for coaching and management. Yeah, all that. It's awesome. All right.
thank you.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. So, by the way, when it comes to compensation, if we have a good handle on where a company is, if any of you are struggling with a region and wondering if your comp is in alignment with, or if you're competitive, feel free to reach out to me, send me a note, give me a call. That's totally fine. I can give you an idea of what my opinion is of the comp range. But once we do target that specific type of individual, whether it's from a competitor or a specific skill set, and then we go to market. And I think what tends to happen is, I think basically a recruiting department should be treated just like your sales department. And that includes KPIs and accountability. And if there's no KPI or accountability, it's hard to be effective. And so one of the things that we try to do is we try to make sure that we have, or we don't try, we do, we have a very clear, and this is what I recommend for all companies, a very clear understanding of the metrics that are required to be successful. So this means how many, so for example, our recruiters, if we were to kick off a search for you and it was, San Francisco, 3 to 5 years, whatever, what your specific domain expertise, and you wanted them in the office in a hybrid location, that means we'd want to understand the geography, how far a person can commute to be hybrid. We would look at the exact skill set, we'd look at the geography, and then we would go after that market. We would then look up and figure out how much outreach. So we want new candidates being added to our system, not that we've connected with. We call them new leads. A certain amount of new leads per day. We want new leads per day, then we want new candidates per day, which means that those leads need to turn into candidates. And then we want a certain amount of submissions. And so on a daily basis, we are tracking the activity, because if our recruiters are not reaching out to enough people, half of them won't get back to you, half of them will reject you. You need to be reaching out to them all the time. And many times it's not the first connect that's going to get you in touch with them. It might be the third or fourth connect. So the first thing we want to do is we want to understand what metrics are required. Then we want to track those metrics to make sure that everyone is doing their part to find and build a pipeline for our customers. If we go to market and every single person in that market says they would be interested in the opportunity, but the compensation's too low, and we reach out to 400 people or 300 people or whatever it is, we are relaying that information to our clients so they understand, they have direct market research as to what's happening in that region and are they competitive. Or as I mentioned earlier, we change requirement or we change comp or what have you. And then we want to understand how many people did we reach out to, how many people got back to us, how many people interviewed with us, how many people were qualified, and then what did that produce? So if 50 people that we reach out to produce one submission and we want to get 10 submissions, we need to reach out to 500 people. And we want to do that as quickly as possible because we know every role is going to move quickly. Our average search takes 30 days or less. So when a company does engage with us, they have to be really prepared to move quickly and have a process down because we're reaching out to so many people in their market, in that geography, in that compensation structure, and we're getting them excited about opportunities. The same thing should happen internally with your team. They should understand the metrics required to fill a role. And so for every company, You should go back through your data and realize how many interviews does it take to get a hire. If you don't know how many interviews it takes to get a hire, you definitely want to go back through your data and figure that out, because your recruiting team needs that data to understand how much output, how much how much workload they need to find enough people to interview to get to their hire. If it's 20 people to get one hire and it takes 200 people to get the 20, then your recruiting team knows exactly what they need to do. They need to get to that 200 people. So it's a really simple mathematical equation, and it's all about accountability. If the recruiting team is not doing the outbound to find that top talent, then it's going to be nearly impossible to find the top talent. When you outsource to us, the team starts immediately. That's what they do. We go after the market. We find the people, and then we introduce them to our clients, and that's why they have such a high success rate and hire so quickly. And by the way, when it comes to speed around hiring, it doesn't mean that they're rushed. It means that they're moving quickly. So we've already pre-qualified a candidate, so we know that they meet your requirements, and we know that they're interested in your company. They've been to the website, they know the comp structure, the average deal size, the sales cycle, what you sell, everything. So the process tends to move pretty quickly. If you have 4 interviews in your process, as long as every interview is not once every week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that's what slows down the process. If you can do if you're focused and serious about making a hire, it should take you 34 weeks to 6 weeks, 30 days, 45 days max. Anything more than that, you'll lose all the top producers. Top producers will not wait around for a company to make a decision. They will actually think you're incompetent and move on.
Sounds like a sales process, doesn't it? All that, when he was describing this whole thing, it's just like, that's what I tell CEOs. It's like, look, or sales managers, recruiting's like sales. The more time you spend trying to find the right candidate, the more people you talk to, the faster you're going to find the right candidate. And you got to have enough in there in the pipeline to make sure you do find the right candidate. And then you measure it. These are like conversion ratios. That's what we do when we're working with the salespeople. Is that sales performance is measured in ratios, and so you have to determine, is it playing out the way we expect? If not, you got to make some adjustments, right? And so if you're not going to spend the time to fill the pipeline with the right candidates, then you got to go to somebody like Dan to make sure that happens, because otherwise, you may not end up with, ideally you've got like at least 2, hopefully 4 candidates that you're talking with at the end of the day that you're excited about getting any of them. That's the right position to be in, right? Right, Dan?
Oh yeah, absolutely. See, the problem, if you go to your recruiting team, or if you just don't have the pipeline you want, so the next question is, well, why? Where are candidates from? If the answer is all advertising, and by the way, advertising works, and you've hired 3 people through advertising, great. Then advertise in more spots. If the answer is we're just not getting the people, then you need to switch your strategy to an outbound strategy quickly and go find the right people. Knock on doors. If you're a small company, no one knows who you are. Like, if you're small, you really need someone reaching out, or your team needs to reach out and introduce you to the talent pool that's out there. And that takes a lot of time. It's a lot of time. It's a lot more work than people think. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but you have to introduce your company to hundreds of people to make sure they know that you guys are growing and looking to hire.
All right.
So I think we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but a lot of times companies get stuck. They think the longer the search goes on, the better they'll be at finding the right individual. That's not necessarily accurate. If you meet someone today and don't meet them again until next Wednesday, it's still only 2 interviews. Did it take a week and a half to change your decision if they're good or bad? I mean, usually if it's a good candidate and you have a strong process, then move on them. Bring them in for Thursday. Bring them back in on Monday. Like, whatever that process looks like, and whoever's involved in it needs to be 100% dedicated to it. And they need to know it's a priority. If it's not a priority, then it's just not a priority to find a top producer and you're just looking to fill a seat. But if it is a top priority, then you want to make sure the team's on board and you want to set goals. Like, what is the timeline goal to having a person on board? And if it's 30 days or less, then interviews should happen quickly. And when you decide you have a good candidate, you should be bringing them in very quickly, or you'll lose them or they'll lose interest. So make sure that you definitely have a strong interview process and you can move, basically quickly. I don't know how many of you use a scorecard, but an interview scorecard is a great thing to develop. And the reason why it's a great tool to develop is so that everyone's on the same page. They all understand what questions are being asked, what are you screening for, you can compare notes, you can see the data come in so that you can understand what that looks like. At Treeline, I know I mentioned we've been a best place to work. There are two things we interview on. One is skill, and the other one is core values. Do they align with our core values? Because Ken mentioned it a couple of times. If you have a low producer that's not producing, it's pretty easy to figure out that it's time to let them go. The hard part is if you have an average producer or above producer that has a poor attitude and doesn't align with your core values, then you really have a problem, especially the average producer. The average producer is quickly confusing. That person is confusing because they're doing enough, but their values don't align with yours. And as a result, if they have low core values for us, we immediately put them on a PIP and we either coach them up or we coach them out. When you've developed that scorecard, use a lot of behavioral questions. I think Ken believes in these as well, but basically it's all about asking candidates, describe a time when, or tell me about a time you overcame tell me a time when you overcame a challenging objection, or you had a tough client that you worked on, or describe the sales cycle from womb to tomb on how you got in the door, how you moved through the process, and what that sales process and cycle looks like. Right? How does that relate to my organization? How does it relate to everything I've told you about our firm? What does that look like? And have you experienced these, challenges in the past?
Yeah.
And then, of course, always watch for red flags. I mean, if someone says they're a hunter, you want to make sure they can tell you how they hunt for net new business, not how they manage existing business. If you are looking for a transactional seller, you want to make sure you understand that they have a motor and they can handle high transactional, high volume outreach. And if they're a strategic thinker, you want to make sure that you understand exactly how their enterprise sale works, how they build pipeline, how they close. These are all things that you want to be testing to make sure that they align with your selling environment. And these, again, are all questions that we ask our clients. We spend about an hour of time working with our clients to understand their needs and their wants. And then we go to market and we qualify these candidates based on all of these attributes we're discussing now.
Yeah, so important. And, I just want to add, yes, it's how did they, and really drill down, and how do they, but it's how will they? Okay. So here, how are you gonna prospect for this job, right? How are you gonna do this for us? And you want something that's well thought out and actually it applies in your sales environment, not something that's ambiguous or even not even close, right? And you'd be surprised.
For one thing that we recommend is so number one, if you do truly understand your sales process, develop a 30, 60, 90-day plan as to what you think this person needs to do in the first 30, 60, and 90 days. And once you've developed that, then when you're interviewing in your third interview, fourth final interview, whatever it is, have them present their 30, 60, 90-day plan of what they're going to do in the first 30, 60, and 90 days. Right? And you've taught them a lot. They should be asking you a lot of questions. You give them enough information so that they can develop a plan to be successful in your company, in this particular region. Then compare the two 30, 60, 90s, give them advice, make recommendations, If you can come to alignment and you're actually pretty close on how this 30, 60, 90-day plan works, then document it and use that for the first 30, 60, 90-day plan, holding them accountable to all the things they said throughout the interview process for them to get ramped up to be successful in your organization.
Awesome.
Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Like know what that looks like, make sure they understand it, come together and gain agreement on it. And you could be in the weeds. You could talk about how many calls they need to make on a daily basis for the first 30 days to be successful. Or, right? So what you think they need, you want to make sure that they present what they think they should do, and then compare notes and then hold them accountable to those exact KPIs. And then they should be on a track to be a pretty successful representative.
Right. That's not a should do. That's a must do. What he just said, that 30, 90 day, I'll tell you why. But first, Dan already covered most of this. I mean, obviously you're reviewing the resume and their job history, and you want to test for it. And the screening, the values, I used to send candidates a whole list of values, and I'd have them pick your top 5 and then rank them from 1 to 5. Okay. And if somebody's picking job security over wealth and making money, that's a red flag. Okay. I'm sorry, but you got to be wanting to make money to be a salesperson. And if job security is all you care about, well, you know what? Sales is not for you, and then interview, go deeper with the questions. And you need to be thinking about, what is it that somebody needs to be doing? What they should be doing because you have top producers. So, if you got to ask questions about how you're going to do this, and you want them to answer something that's similar to what your top producers are doing. Okay. And if they don't, ask more questions about it, because if they never get close, I'm not sure if they're the right person. Okay. And you can go to their job history and ask, what did they really do? But you've got to ask 3 or 4 questions before you really understand, what did they really do? Or was it handed to them? Or did somebody else do most of the work and they just were there to reap the benefit, right? And then what will they do? And trust your gut. I mean, a lot of times we don't follow our gut and it comes back to bite us. And we want to have multiple people. I was just talking to somebody who I've been keeping in touch with because they haven't gotten a real good salesperson yet. So they're not ready for me. But, the owner, this is a bioscience company, and the owner is a PhD scientist, and the person he trusts the most is his chief scientist. They're scientists. And so they got this candidate they're interviewing, and they love the person. It's a PhD. Now, I'm not sure you want to hire a PhD to do sales for you in the first place, but they're like, yeah, this person's great. So then they have the marketing person interview them. I don't know, maybe it was an office manager, and she's talking to him, and the person says, I'm a business development guy. As long as you want me to do business development, this is perfect for me. Just don't ask me to sell. What? And these scientists, they don't understand the difference between business development and sales. They don't get it, and it's just, so you want to have other people interview and listen to what they say, okay? Especially if they're going to be working with this person, right? And then do the references. Now, Dan and I, we kind of have different opinions on this, because no one's going to give you a bad reference, right? But if you can talk to the people that they didn't give you, that they used to work for, now that's a good conversation to have. Okay, why didn't you give me them in the first place? And so, hey, I understand so-and-so worked there. Can I have 20 minutes just to ask how, a couple of questions? Those are the people you want to talk to, I think. But definitely call the references anyway, even the references they give you. I can't stress how important that is, right? And then we already talked about this, the 30. So this is must do number 5, okay? And that's why I said what Dan was talking about, the 30, 60, 90 days is a must do, because the employment behavioral contract is a must do. Normally what you do is you give somebody an offer. So what you're saying is, we're giving you this title. We're giving you this salary and benefits. We're giving you this compensation program. Sign here. Well, where does it say what they're supposed to do for you? Here's what we expect you to do in the 30, 60, 90 days. You can truncate it, but just give them some, this is what we expect in the first 30, 60, 90 days. Here's how you'll be measured. Sign here. Okay? This is a two-way street. You're bringing somebody in, you're giving them an opportunity with the expectation that they're going to do something for you. Okay? And if nothing else, define what happens if it doesn't work out, because that's where companies run into trouble. Because you have to let them go or they leave, and there's some stuff that they worked on that's still hanging out there. And like, hey, you owe me money for this if you close it. Well, no, we don't. Oh, yes, we do. Okay, well, now you did have a disagreement. You have to define, what do they get paid on if it doesn't work out in their agreement? Okay, very important. And then once they come in, then must do number 6 is you onboard them in accordance to that plan, and show them what you expect and more details on that, and give them the training they need, and meet with the other people that are involved, and set some really great expectations. What are the goals? What are the roles they're supposed to fill in? What resources are you going to give them? Accountability, what they're being accountable for themselves, how you expect them to manage their time. Okay. And so, if you've got a good onboarding process, then 70% more likely to stay more than 3 years. Very important. Okay. Because the cost of disengagement is huge. This Gallup poll said it's 17.2% of the organization was actively disengaged, which costs on average $3,400 for every $10,000 of salary. And then must do number 7, provide training. And Dan alluded to this. You have salespeople already. You know who the top producers are. You know what they are doing that helps them be more successful. And so then train your other team members to the gaps. What is it that they're not doing that the top producers are doing? And train them up on those skills. Okay. And then provide coaching to people so that they can continue to improve. And they're never going to catch the top producer, because the top producer is always going to want to be doing better. But they can improve in the areas where there's gaps. Okay. So very important. All right. Questions? Who's got a question? Maurice, what type of position are you searching for, or do you have open?
Yeah, it's funny because Dan was talking about San Francisco and hybrid, and it's pretty much nailed what we're looking for in California, in the Bay Area currently. It's that person, that hunter. But since our company, like most, maybe some people on here, is smaller, we're expected to do not only account management, but a lot of hunting as well. So it has to be someone that's very dynamic. And since they're not at the home office, it has someone that can work well on their own. And that's hard to find. That's sometimes very difficult to find someone that actually think about the business as their own business and treat it like that, right? Because they're expected to do a lot of admin work as well. They got to be good at the admin. They got to be good at the sales. So there's just a lot of things that position would need, since they aren't here and they don't have the full support system of the home office versus a satellite office. So it's been challenging. We've been at it for a few months now, maybe 3-4 months. One of the things I don't think we're aligning on is the compensation package. So I think I think Dan said it best. I think you either got to move up your compensation package or lower your expectations. And I don't think we've kind of reached that because it is California. So it's a little bit tougher out there as far as compensation and how competitive you need to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, so they're gonna be independent. They're out there, and so if you have customers out there already that you can give them to manage, that might be helpful, because at least then they're making some money, but also they can develop those relationships. Maybe they can get more business from them, but more importantly, they can now, once they develop those relationships with them, they can now maybe get referred to other opportunities through the people that they're establishing those relationships with, that will be helpful for them. But the challenge, again, you know, with manufacturing and distribution is that a lot of times you have account managers and you hire for the customer service capability. And customer service people are so worried about disrupting the relationship that they're afraid to ask, hey, do you need this? Or have you, they don't want to appear salesy. They're not sales personalities. Okay. And so they don't ask the right questions. They need to have the exact right way to ask the questions. And so you have to be careful if you're hiring somebody in that kind of role, that you don't get somebody who's too much of an account manager, in other words, customer service, and doesn't have the sales DNA. They're not direct enough. You know, if they're way high relationship and way low on direct, way high on I and way low on D, or way high on S. Usually they're usually SCs and not, they may not be good at bringing in new business.
Right.
And so be careful with that.
Okay.
Maurice, real quick, San Fran and New York, they're the toughest markets to recruit in, and most of the time it's because of comp. It's just it's so expensive in both those regions that they become incredibly difficult to recruit in. We're 100% virtual. We had an office for 20 some odd years, and then COVID hit, and we ended up just going virtual. And we failed quite a bit at hiring a virtual sales team. Some people were good at it, some people weren't. The transition, some people liked it, some people didn't. But we changed our questioning around. We wanted to understand, have they worked in a virtual environment before? Do they have a home office? Where do they work? Are they in a room, closed door? What distracts them while they're at home? Do they have all the technology? What is the speed of their internet? We would ask all of these questions to make sure that this person could answer and knew how to work in a virtual environment. And otherwise, if they didn't have their own office, if they weren't interviewing in their own office, it was already a red flag.
I'm going to stop the recording here. Just bear with me here for a minute.
Really interesting. I don't think we've asked, those have gone down to that level